Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
On lowering prices, you said earlier that the actions the president has taken have worked. So is it your sense that when people were home for Thanksgiving, catching up with their family members, they were saying to each other, can you believe how much more affordable things have gotten?
So honestly, I wouldn't, I hear the question, but I want to make sure this is very clear. We take that very seriously.
That was Pete Ducey yesterday asking KJP about inflation.
Is that what you were talking about, Mike, on your Thanksgiving table? Man, stuff's gotten so affordable. Just money, just making it rain. I just feel like I'm swimming in it. I didn't get that at my Thanksgiving table.
I don't think that happened at a lot of places. Welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I'm Mike Murphy here with the crew. Stephanie Bell. That was Stephanie Bell. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning.
Brian Hauswirth is here. John Marsh is here. And Hannah, the producer, is here.
Hello.
We got a busy show lined up for you. Chris Arps will be here like he usually is on Tuesdays around 6:30. Kip Kendrick's going to be in around 7 to talk about this new state law that allows counties to freeze property taxes, and Boone County's taking some action on that. Later in the show, Columbia police officers say the city is headed down a path that defunds the police. They think you should know about it. We're going to talk about it. Around 7:30, we're going to talk about the mayor. She's going to Dubai. Yes, the United Arab
Didn't she
Emirates.
just get back from China?
Yeah.
She just got back, and we're hoping she didn't get groomed while she was over there. Now she's headed, Mayor Barbara Buffalo, 8 days to collaborate, I guess, with world leaders.
I wonder if Mayor Fitzwater is listening right now and is scratching his head just like we are.
I'm thinking, can I be the mayor? Technically, I'm the mayor pro tem of Ashland.
There you go.
I think I've gotten as far as Centralia on some sort of like city, municipal league meeting.
You could do a junket to Joplin or something.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad to know that our climate emergency is getting her attention. A little later in the show, we'll discuss some emergencies here in Columbia that we think should be getting her attention also. Let's check in with Brian Hauswirth, though, on this murder yesterday in Jeff City.
Hello? Yeah. Here we go.
Okay, there we go. Thanks so much, Mike.
Brian, you're there.
Yeah, I am here, absolutely, and I definitely have some thoughts as well. By the way, on the a little bit later on the trip to United Arab Emirates, a little background on that. This case in Cole County, obviously beyond horrific. We were first to report the name of the suspect. A lot of people in Jeff City know her as Regina Redmond. Her real name is Regine Redmond. Probable cause statement was released yesterday. They have released the victim's name, but the probable cause statement, I'm going to give you just the very basic version because there's a lot of stuff in here just that is too graphic to get into. She is accused of stabbing and slashing her stepfather to death. We don't know exactly when he was found dead on Friday evening. She's 27 years old, really no criminal record to speak of. She's charged with first-degree murder. The Cole County Sheriff's probable cause statement says Redmond had blood on her hands, face, legs, and arms when deputies arrived on Friday and interviewed her. She allegedly smelled of bleach, and there was bleach near the victim's body, and she provided numerous accounts of what happened. At first, she tried to blame it on intruders, and then she tried to blame it on someone else, and then she also claimed that she didn't call 911 because she didn't have a phone, but when the authorities arrived, she was standing out in front of a car that had a phone in the car covered in blood. So just a horrible case. A lot of our listeners want to know what else, the motive behind it, and we don't know. There's no indication of that. That probably won't come out until trial, but that was her stepfather, if you will. He's 80, and as John Marsh reported this morning, he's been identified as Melvin Callahan. Nice area. This is an area called Lansing Creek Road. Those are nice homes. This is closer to Brazito than it is to Jefferson City.
Did you say first degree? Is she getting charged?
Yes.
See, that's what doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound like this would be something that would be planned, but to get first degree, that's what they're saying, right?
And first degree indicates Locke Thompson believes it was premeditated.
What is it, the bleach? I mean, she said like she showed up with bleach to try to clean it off. Apparently she didn't do a very good job, but...
And also she had shampoo in her hair and kept saying, I was in the shower, but she wasn't wet. She just according to the court documents, she placed the shampoo on her basically dry hair. And really, the probable cause statement pokes numerous holes at her story there. But the next really issue for Prosecutor Thompson will he seek the death penalty? Because when you file first-degree murder, you need to let the court know, and it's too early right now. He's got to still review things, but at some point he's going to have to make a decision. Does he pursue the death penalty? But absolutely, he is saying this is premeditated. That's why he filed first-degree murder.
Wow.
A lot.
That is a lot.
It's in those, and I left out a lot of stuff.
Well, it's just unusual.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, the court
ages,
documents
the
are
age
horrible.
different. The relationship, that doesn't sound like first-degree murder. That's what's so odd about it. And I don't doubt that it is, but that means there's some really strange details here that, ultimately I'm sure will come out.
Yep.
It was just a horrible case.
Yeah, I'm surprised, Mike, that we haven't heard from you yet today saying "I told you so."
Because
you made
last night.
You made a prediction yesterday, and you were right on the nose.
Well, that was pretty easy. So Rachel Prophet was selected to replace Andrea Weiner as the second ward council person on the Columbia City Council. It was no surprise. If I knew that if Andrea Weiner was recommending her, which she did, I suspected strongly she wouldn't have done that if the mayor, didn't concur. Andrea Weiner was also a member of first ward council person Nick Kno's campaign committee, which, by the way, before the meeting, he got asked by a member of the public that he should abstain from voting because of a conflict of interest, which he ignored, and I think rightfully, but it's interesting. So there's no surprise there. The process, I don't know, Brian. First of all, I have no complaints with the selection. She has said she's not going to seek the position
Correct.
Permanently. So that's kind of nice because that sort of, I think, takes any kind of anxiety out of it about her getting a leg up in the election or take some of the politics out of it. She's going to serve till April, and then we'll have a fresh election and start from scratch and get a new person out of the second ward. The process
I thought that was a little unusual, Mike.
Well, I think the whole thing's unusual, and that's what people are complaining about. So here's what's hard to explain sometimes about the city of Columbia. So they've had weeks and weeks to get this figured out. And here last night, the mayor's commenting about how difficult it was for them to get the process. They had to go back to the 80s. She was talking about going back to typewritten documents to see how to do this. It all came up at the last, kind of at the last minute. It is in the, Andrea Weiner did not vote. I thought she was going to vote. So here she makes a recommendation. She doesn't vote. They said they were going to interview the candidates. They actually didn't. There was a little bit of interviewing that went on. But candidates called. The Missourian had a little piece this morning that said somebody called them and said, hey, they never interviewed me. So it sounds like a set-up job. And then the Chris Jones, who frequently appears before council, she basically went in and said, hey, I've already heard on the street that council members are saying it's going to be Rachel Prophet. And that sounds to me like you're having an illegal meeting and this whole process doesn't sound right. And, I think there's a lot of truth to what she's saying. But at the end of the day, it's done. She got 4 votes. It took, I think, 4 rounds.
Right.
And in the end, Bill Moyes was getting some support from Don Waterman and Betsy Peters. After the 3rd round, we went into the 4th round. Betsy, I think just being pragmatic, made the decision to switch her vote over to Rachel Prophet, and that is a done deal.
Yeah, and John and Mike, and you all bring up a very good point. I think it's important to note, in fairness here, that Nick Foster said last night to our news partner that there was nothing done before the meeting. There was no agreement made before the meeting. Basically, he made that very clear. And Nick Foster said, that he was very impressed with Prophet. Prophet's well known in our listening area. She was the supporter. She basically is the catalyst for bringing roll carts to Columbia. And people may not remember that, but she is. She's made it very clear she's not going to seek a full term, so this basically is going to fill the position. She's saying 5 to 6 months, but it's really 4.
Yeah.
It's December, January, February, and March. But if you read, Mike, and I know you have her application, she said she's going to focus on homelessness. She's worried about some other issues as well, affordable housing. But one of the things she says and she doesn't elaborate, but I will ask her the next time I see her, she's saying that roll carts, as they are rolled out next year, she says that they may need some adjustments. She doesn't say what those adjustments are, but that, again, that is taking a long time just to get the roll carts off and running. So there's some things there she's going to focus on, and no one can say that it was, unfair, because really it's filling a position for 3 or 4 months, basically. Yeah, and she's not running again.
And that's, I think, the redeeming thing here, because no matter who you choose, there's going to be a little bit of controversy. She's certainly qualified. She's certainly been involved. It's hard to make any case that, against her, for sure. And it is interesting on the roll carts that she's coming aboard. The deal there is obviously there's been all this controversy, and the biggest worry about roll carts is, they're going to be all over town. They're going to be a big mess.
That's what Dan Vietz has said.
And then here we find out a few weeks ago that, Councilperson Betsy Peters comes to council and saying, hey, we don't even have an ordinance about how to store these yet.
That's right.
And you just got to look at city staff and say, come on, folks, you got to get on a stick here. This is looking messy enough. I guess, Rachel Prophet certainly came to be known through the roll cart issue. Hopefully she'll be a proponent for helping them get this thing launched with as least amount of misery for Columbia residents as possible.
But ultimately, we don't expect any sort of changes in the council. It's going to be just more of the same.
Basically, sure. I would expect that on a lot of issues, her vote would be similar.
She's a progressive voice. Yeah. She's a university professor. Her last job was in Southern California. She's been active in a lot of typical progressive causes. No, she fits right in with. Philosophically, she wouldn't be a lot different than Andrea Weiner. So you're not going to see. You're not going to see anything.
But she's not progressive enough for Chris Jones. Chris Jones is kind of a different kind of faction. But Chris, basically, her argument was that this was done. It was a done deal ahead of time. I thought that was what
that's definitely what they were thinking. And the other thing is Susan Renee Carter, who they would like to see in there. She's affiliated with Race Matters Friends. She. Susan Renee Carter shows up at every single council meeting. She's active. She speaks her mind. She's knowledgeable. She goes to committee meetings, and she would be regarded as an excellent council member. And they're kind of saying, hey, why not her? That's in the back. That's in the back.
Absolutely, is what they're saying.
So, done deal now. So, upward and onward. We got 4 months.
government and we're here to help. See, we're friendly government people. That wasn't the exact quote, Mike, was it? The actual quote, of course, the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
It was missing the big C word.
He got, context. He got roasted on Twitter and social media for being an idiot, and for that blunder yesterday. We're not surprised given his leader and others that are in the Biden administration. Of course, we heard KJP also taking a question earlier from Ducey, talking about inflation, saying, Ducey said, do you think people were actually at their Thanksgiving table saying it's all good? Everyone's feeling better. The government's working. And she said, well, she blabbed on for a really long time before she just said, well, the data shows that it is doing better. And better is not good. Right. So it was a rough day yesterday, I think, in D.C. for folks who were trying to push forward, all is rainbows and unicorns under Joe Biden. OK, we've got a very exciting inconsequential debate coming up. We've had a lot of inconsequential debates. Of course, we've had the folks who have I think the highest person on the stage in the presidential debates that has 15%. They have no chance of winning. But we keep doing them. And we got one coming up the first week of December. But this week, we have an even more inconsequential debate, and that would be California versus Florida. Newsom versus DeSantis. They're squaring off. Sean Hannity, I think, is leading the charge. Are you going to tune in, Mike?
Probably not. I am a little curious. Who do you think has the most to lose there?
Well, and the opposite's really what the news media is saying. They're saying they are so low that they both only stand to win. I don't know that I agree with that.
I don't either. I think DeSantis is at risk here. If he doesn't perform well, he's already got issues. I don't mean issues. Certainly, he's got issues, but I mean he's already struggling. And I feel like anything less than a fairly stellar performance just adds to his struggle.
Yeah, I wonder if he's going to wear his wedges.
Yeah, I was going to say, good thing he doesn't have to stand next to you, Mike. How tall on the stage?
Yeah, that's true. I think his big problem is Nikki Haley and Iowa, and then South Carolina and New Hampshire, and a loss of momentum pretty much dooms him.
I think you're right. And I think you bring up a good point, Mike, with Nikki Haley, in that she has been doing really well on the debate stage. He has been seen as kind of awkward and floundering. And so you put him on the debate stage against someone like Newsom. And I agree. I think he could really do some damage but I do think if he completely pummels Newsom, then it might give him a little bit of
I have a hard time imagining that, though. You know what I mean? I would be happy to see it, but I just have a hard time picturing it.
This would be his perfect opportunity and his perfect chance, because really, if we break this debate down to Florida versus California, he has a lot of good stuff to talk about.
For sure.
So
might be kind of the train wreck entertaining factor.
It could be. That's right. All right. Well, there's a big climate summit going on over in Dubai. Biden is not going to show up.
He often does, which is interesting.
Yeah, he won't be there, but someone from our hometown here, Mid-Mo.
Columbia Mayor Barbara Buffalo is going to be speaking there, according to her press release.
Biden said, I've heard her talk before. I'm going to send Antony Blinken. I don't really know, but he won't be there. But our mayor, Columbia Mayor, will be there. We also, sometime we got to get to this. We've got an important Supreme Court case on the SEC and the administrative state. But now...
And it sounds like we had a pretty wild meeting of the St. Charles County Council last night. Chris?
Mike, how are you, my friend?
Good.
I think I know about 5 or 6 people with the name Mike Murphy. I'm sure you've heard that before.
There are a few around.
Yeah, it was a wild event out of the St. Charles County Council. They passed a resolution not to accept illegal migrants that the government is shifting all over the country. Now, of course, the media and the leftists will try to portray this as some jingoistic anti-immigration bill, but actually it's not. And we talked about this yesterday on my show. I think this is a proactive measure. We see cities like New York. They have spent close to $100,000 on what's called a reticketing program, which they provide free bus and plane tickets and migrant seekers to different localities. Denver has spent $4.3 million sending people to other cities, and Catholic Charities in Chicago said it has used money to buy 2,500 to bus 2,500 migrants to other towns. So this is St. Charles County not trying to accept these other municipalities' problems by sending them here.
Reticketing is such a nice way to put that. Now, I saw there were some big, big names in the room. I think Bill Eigel was there. What was he doing there? Were there other statewide candidates there? What's going on?
You know, I've heard rumors that Bill Eigel's running for governor, so that may be the reason that he was there. But he should be there, as all officials that are concerned about this. We don't want instead of the Democrats blaming their Democratic administration, Joe Biden, on having the border wide open and not doing the policies that we need to stop this. They're just shifting the burden to other localities, giving money and sending them here. So, as I said, I think it's proactive of St. Charles County, and I think it's a good deal. And we've also seen, I looked at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch this morning, it shows that there is a state representative in Lesterville that is attempting to do something like this on the statewide level to not accept illegal migrants into our state.
Neat story from Fox 2 that I guess jumps one county over, Chris, and they were talking about they got some folks who got their assessments in the mail from the assessor's office in St. Louis County, and a name we hadn't heard in a while, St. Louis County Exec Sam Page was among them. But his didn't go up, and they were kind of wondering what the heck's going on.
Boy, imagine that. Now, my wife and I, we both, over the last few years, our home has been reassessed higher than we think that it should be. You love to see your house value go up, but especially when you're moving, but not while you're still here paying the taxes. Now, we have appealed our assessment, and we have won both times. And it was such an easy process. I think they do it like that because they know most people won't challenge the assessment, and so they just automatically go through. So I would encourage anybody, if you get an assessment that you don't agree with, challenge it. More than likely, it will be reduced. You got to go and get a appraisal, which we did to prove that your house is not as valuable as they say it is. But that is kind of coincidental that Sam Page's assessment didn't go up. Maybe he appealed it. I don't know.
Is this like the gas tax thing, though, where you spend like 20 hours filling out the paperwork and you get $13? I mean, did you really save a ton of money?
Did it pay for the appraisal?
We paid for the appraisal. Look, I think our house was appraised at, I don't want to say, it was appraised at a certain value, but the appraisal that we got was probably $60,000, $70,000 less than what the county appraised it for.
So pretty significant.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And we sent that in. They was like, the whole process, my wife did it over the phone. It lasted probably about 6 minutes. They're like, is this what you say that your house is worth? Is this what the appraisal? Is this legitimate? Yes. Okay, we agree. See you next time. So a lot of people now, and it really surprised me because I put this on Facebook that we did this, and a high school classmate of mine, she said, well, I've always been afraid to challenge it because she was thinking that puts you on their radar screen for higher assessments in the future. But it's not. I would tell you, challenge that assessment. 9 times out of 10, you will win it.
Or for like retaliation or something. But then again, I think like I've been in situations, and I think I'm about to be in one now, where the government wants to take some property that I have, and I'm trying to boost that value up and say, oh no, it's worth this amount, right? So you got to be careful. I guess it depends on which side of the line you're on.
Exactly.
So, Chris, the Army is discharging folks who will not take the COVID vaccine, and Senator Schmidt is weighing in.
Well, you remember during the pandemic when we had this mass hysteria that businesses and government were mandating people that they had to get the vaccine in order to come to work. We remember there were many service members who had legitimate concerns. They had legitimate religious exemptions, but they were not allowed to utilize that. And so many people, I think I'm reading here, 10,700 people were let go from the Army. Now we realize, I think Stephanie can address this, I think there was a court case that said that was illegal to mandate people get these vaccines. So Senator Schmidt has sent letters to the Secretary of Army asking some questions about these former soldiers, like if they come back, will they get back pay, other things like that.
Well, and Chris, we've heard from our friends even here locally who are involved in military recruitment and saying, you know, the numbers just aren't there. People first don't have the physical capabilities to serve. That's a problem. But then also just recruitment numbers overall are down, especially after COVID. And so you think we kicked all these people out, we're requiring all these things, but now, you know, and now we've got 2 world conflicts going on. I think we're all on kind of heightened alert, knowing that we've got to get folks into the military and we've got to treat them right.
Yeah, in 2022, Stephanie, the Army missed its recruitment goals by 15,000 soldiers, which is nearly 25%. And one of the big reasons people are believing that folks don't want to join the service is because of the mistrust. Because of the mandate. And as you alluded to, you know, with the situation in the Middle East and Ukraine, and North Korea has lifted a spy satellite, which they claim they have spied on Pearl Harbor and the White House. We need a strong military, and the COVID mandates depleted that.
Plus, with the benefit of history, and I've changed my position on this, I guess, is if I was a healthy young man, I don't think I want that vaccine either. You know? I
wouldn't either. And you know, speak of that, and we were watching the game last Sunday, and Moderna has come out with a new vaccine for COVID, which is specifically is geared towards younger people. And I was like, all of the science and all the reports said that younger people are not susceptible to COVID and don't get the very serious diseases or the maladies from it. And why are you focusing a drug on something that people really don't need? And then we saw with the COVID vaccines that younger people, especially men, were having heart problems because of the vaccine. It just seems a little tone deaf to me.
Yeah, they don't want no part of it. I have a mid-20s son, and in the height of the pandemic, I thought he should have got vaccinated. I was, pushing him to get vaccinated and actually arguing with him a little bit. And he's like, you got to be crazy. I'm not taking that thing. And I actually at the time thought he was being stubborn and crazy. They couldn't travel. We had all kinds of issues with it. You couldn't go to a movie theater and stuff. Right. It was just a big thing at the time. But he was absolutely going to have no part of it. And looking back on it, and I admitted this long ago, looking back upon it, I mean, I totally agree with his decision at this point.
I'm so thankful I didn't. Yeah, I didn't give it to my kids. By the way, what are we doing with our vaccine cards? Mine's still in my wallet. And I'm like, remember when they were like, don't lose this? It's like
I got copies everywhere.
Security card. And I'm like, what am I doing with this? Hey, Chris, I wanted to go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, you're going on this event. You're leaving town today. I thought you were going to leave us. So I'm glad you moved your flight so you could be with us this morning. But our mayor in Colombia is going to where? She's going to Dubai for a couple days for the climate summit. You're off to a resort and spa, but you say it's for work. So
it's for work.
It looks very nice. It's cold here. I think you're going to Arizona. What are you doing there?
Global warming sounds like.
I'm I'm going to Scottsdale, and I don't want to rub this in, but the high temperature today will be 76 degrees. It will be a little warmer than it is here, but the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC, is having their what do they call it? Their States and Nation Policy Summit. My wife and I will be traveling there on behalf of Americans for Citizens Voting. My radio partner, former Speaker Tim Jones, is a member of ALEC, so he is out there already. And we will be actually doing our show for the next 3 days from Scottsdale, Arizona, from this conference. But, hey, it's December coming up. Next year is a big election year. And so ALEC is coming together to do some planning so that conservative causes can have victory next year.
All right.
Looks like they have
duty.
looks like they've got a really good lineup of speakers too. So we'll have to get a full update from you next week.
Most definitely.
Good morning.
Brian Hauswirth is around here somewhere. John Marsh.
Yes, sir.
And Hannah, the producer.
Hello.
So, Columbia police officers out with another press release here yesterday. Openly hostile, really, to the mayor and the city council here in Columbia, calling out what they are saying is a prototypical defund the police move here in Columbia. And I hate to say this because I don't want to overstate it, but we're getting into this. Our mayor, we're giving her some grief for all this traveling she's doing. Well, I think, Columbia City government is a bit of a dumpster fire, and some of her inexperience and incompetence is really showing through here on this issue. And I'll tell you about how we got here and what's going on is a little boy gets accidentally shot and killed a few weeks ago. I guess it's a couple months ago. And at the time, she doesn't really know the details, thinks it's a horrific street crime, and calls out for a new city Office of Violence Prevention. You may remember that. It was in the
whatever
news.
Happened to that?
Well, I'm about to tell you. Okay. And at the time, she was widely mocked and ridiculed across the spectrum. On the left, the police reformers, they've been calling for a violence intervention program here in Columbia since it was part of recommendations in a 214 mayor's task force on community violence. Some type of community violence prevention program was part of the ARPA funds initiative. But the city, it can't come up with a viable option for an impactful violence prevention program. I think it could pay for it. I think there's initiative for it, but they've never been able to come up with one. So this was regarded at the time as the mayor sort of, I think, mindlessly showboating a non-solution while the media was focused on what looked like this terrible crime. It actually turned out to be a tragic accident. Then from the police officer's point of view, though, number one, there already is what should be a 200-member strong Office of Violence Prevention called the Columbia Police Department. Of course, it's floundering. It's at 65% of staff. They believe they're not supported by the city council. But they know, or police leadership certainly know, that these offices of violence prevention across the country, and the mayor even mentioned examples in Baltimore and Philadelphia, they're vehicles for taking funds previously dedicated to law enforcement and redirecting them to alternate crime reduction initiatives, often some social programs. So that's a classic defund the police mechanism. So the mayor mentioned at the time of this that she announced this Office of Violence Prevention that there might be some type of funding in the budget. But now here we are, weeks later, and just this last week, we're having what has turned out to be an annual discussion on federal asset forfeiture funds. Now, I don't know if you follow that much, but they're kind of controversial. If the feds can seize assets from criminals or suspected criminals, drug dealers, critics believe that this is often misused, that there's a profit motive involved. People don't get their money back, even though they're not guilty. It's a whole thing.
It's a big deal. I was just reading Reason magazine yesterday. Goodbye to Detroit's asset forfeiture racket. So Columbia's not the only one.
That's very true. Across the country, this thing is controversial for a lot of good reasons. But regardless of all that, when the feds work a case and seize assets, a portion of that goes back to the municipality. And over the years, Columbia has accumulated about a $400,000 stockpile of these assets, this cash, and it's not in a budget. It's just lying there. And they don't spend it largely because if they go to spend it, they got to have city council approval to spend it. And that's going to bring the whole thing up. So it just sits there. Now, in the past, they have bought some things like, I think, body armor, cameras, things like that to aid them in their crime fighting efforts.
It's one of those deals, too. We remember the history on this. This was all that federal forfeiture stuff. A lot of it, other than the Al Capone era, a lot of it was designed to bring down the Miami drug cartels during the cocaine epidemic.
Take their money. And a lot of it sort of outside the court system, and there's justice issues with this, and that's indeed true, and that's what makes it so controversial. But outside of that, the money comes in and it's sitting there, so that kind of clouds the argument. There's also a cloud on about exactly what the money should be used for. But the police here have used it in the past to buy things for themselves that they might not otherwise get in the budgeting process to help them fight crime. But last week, and this is where it gets kind of interesting, a city council meeting, it comes around that they have this $400,000 stockpile again, And it gets suggested by the city council that they use this to fund this new Office of Community Violence. So now here in Columbia, in a blatant, out in the open, easily recognizable instance, you have funds formerly used for police now being diverted, or perhaps diverted, this hasn't happened yet, somewhere else. So at the end of the day, CPOD is bringing this up, saying this is an issue, and we're taking funds that are typically used to combat crime and using it for something dubious like this.
Are we surprised, though? Are we surprised given our current council?
No, not at all. And, I just, so they're complaining about it. So that's what's happening. We'll be back next with Kip Kendrick.
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Welcome back to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I'm Mike Murphy with Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Brian Hauswirth will be joining us shortly. John Marsh.
Yes, sir.
Hannah, the producer.
Hola.
And joining us is Boone County Presiding Commissioner Kip Kendrick. State of Missouri passed a law this summer that allows counties to freeze property tax increases when homeowners become eligible for Social Security. Boone County took some action on that last week. Presiding Commissioner Kendrick is here to talk to us about what they did and why they did it. Welcome in, Kip.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to come on.
So, tell us what you did and why you did it.
Yeah. So last week, the Boone County Commission passed a resolution stating our intent to make cleanup language for Senate Bill 190 a top legislative priority for Boone County. This was in response to what Missouri Association of Counties did also over that weekend at the Missouri Association of Counties annual conference. Counties from across the state had been working on proposed legislation to kind of clean up and provide clarity on Senate Bill 190 in order to be able to have that clarity necessary to implement. And that was adopted as a top legislative priority for the association. And the good thing is that we feel confident there were lawmakers in the room when that was being discussed. And I certainly don't want to speak for them, but they are aware of the proposed legislation. And I think the association is well on their way of having lawmakers identified to be able to sponsor the legislation and hopefully push it forward in 2024.
Quick question, Kip, before I forget. So I know Cole County, and we got a lot of listeners, Cole County's listening in too. Cole County commissioners decided not to take action on this. Do you know their level of participation in this with the Association of Counties?
You know, they were certainly in the room.
Okay.
Certainly had conversations with their commission. I don't know. I can't recall if they had a member on the task force or not.
Okay.
But they've certainly been engaged.
Okay, so you're basically telling us that, if I'm reading you right here, is you're not necessarily opposing the idea of getting some a tax, some freeze on these increases, but you really don't like the language. You got a lot of problems with the language as this bill is written. Is that? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So we certainly don't question the intent of the legislation. We know how it came about, right? Or generally, kind of the timeline. It was this portion of Senate Bill 190, which was the property tax freeze, was discussed on the Senate floor, offered as an amendment the second Friday from the last, right before the end of session. And so it hadn't gone through a typical vetting process of going through committees and crossing chambers at that point. It was added on the Senate floor. Little discussion. The intent was certainly laid out, but counties across the state had some concerns about how the language was written. And one of the concerns, it was just right off the bat of who's eligible for the program. Under a strict reading of the law, those individuals eligible for Social Security benefits. And so we know that excludes a good amount of retirees. Retired teachers don't participate in Social Security. They never pay into it. They pay into a different defined benefit program. So strict reading of the law, which, that's what we are here in the state. We don't have legislative history on this issue, would then exclude certain groups. But it could also, if you take a broader interpretation of who's eligible for Social Security, you would likely have a younger individual challenging, well, I hit my quarters, I'm eligible for Social Security, I just cannot draw down at this time. And so we want clarification on who is eligible. I think it would also something that the State Tax Commission, a group under the Department of Revenue, pointed out is the potential retroactivity of the law, and the way they're interpreting it would be that while it is a prospective law, the issue that you would, if you have an individual in their 90s, 80s, or 90s you would have to look back to the point where that individual purchased the home and roll back the assessed value to that point. And so certainly want clarification there. We want clarification, counties want clarifications on the ability also to determine an application process and require documentation for administrative purposes to make sure that we can double check, make sure that this is a proper homestead and primary residence and people aren't, using multiple homesteads across the state.
Commissioner Kendrick, we appreciate you joining us live on the show, and so many things obviously going on with this. I know that Representative Cherie Tolson-Reich is doing her petition drive right now, and we've covered that, and I know how you kind of feel about that, but I do want to ask you about the general view of her and her supporters, who basically say that property taxes and personal property taxes are too high. And one of the biggest things she has said, and essentially, is that for a lot of seniors, it's hard to pay it. That they basically have a hard time coming up with that money every year. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, we don't question the intent of the legislation. For many fixed income seniors and low moderate income seniors, the increased property values in recent years that we've seen have led to increased assessed value and increased levy as a result. And we know that it's pinching seniors, and we've certainly seen this issue kind of more pronounced in other areas of the state, Jackson County in particular in recent years. I know that's been a big discussion inside the Capitol. This is a big piece of legislation that could have a very significant impact, dollar amount, also on taxing jurisdictions across the county. And that's the conversation that's been certainly had with the Missouri Association of Counties. Is only 5, I believe that's still accurate, only 5 counties at this time have taken action on it. The vast majority of 114 counties haven't taken action because they want to see some clarification, and counties want to make sure also that what is implemented doesn't have long-lasting impact or unintended consequences that really hinder taxing jurisdictions, school districts, fire districts, water districts across their counties.
Talk to us about how this debate all goes, Kip. I think there's a lot of confusion on behalf of taxpayers out there. They hear about maybe freezing property taxes for seniors. Then they hear the ongoing debate we hear at the Capitol almost every year about eliminating personal property taxes. Is there a comparison there?
So I mean, that will certainly be a conversation again this next year in the Capitol. I believe that's a priority of the Speaker of the House. It's also a priority of at least one senator to roll back or even potentially eliminate personal property tax. That's arguments could be made. I've had these conversations certainly inside the Capitol before as a lawmaker and then as a chief of staff, certainly with other staffers on if you roll back or eliminate, there's strong argument made it's a regressive tax, right? Especially personal property tax. But there has to be some type of mechanism to make up that difference for school districts in particular. School districts in the state are heavily reliant on property taxes anymore, to the tune of 70% of, I believe it's closer to 70% of revenue for Columbia Public Schools comes from the local tax base. And I know that's similar to school districts across the state. So if that's going to be eliminated, then we really have to come up with a mechanism to be able to make up that difference in other ways.
Now, we've been hearing we have been hearing from some of our friends in the State House that the budget will be tightening and the state won't always be flush with the cash that it has been. Given your connections in the State House, you have had some pretty good success in securing some additional funds for Mid-Missouri. Do you have a list heading into the session knowing that those extra funds might not be available for, the future?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think that I know that they're working on the consensus revenue estimate right now, and I expect that is out typically by the end of this week or by mid to late next week. And that'll always be a telling, document. Well, hopefully once it's released, it will give everybody kind of an indication of what anticipated revenue growth is looking like and how much money lawmakers will have to be able to budget and what the governor's proposed budget will be based on. I would expect that there's a decent amount of one-time funding opportunities available this next year. And then I think it probably starts to taper off. Believe that you'll probably see from both the House and the Senate, and a push to limit ongoing, cost to continues or ongoing budget items, trying to limit the amount of new decision items there and try to make sure that that's controlled. And probably any new spending is other than mandatory cost to continue. Any new spending you'll probably see in more one-time capital projects or one-time funds that kind of do what they can to rein in potential FY26, FY27 budget years.
Okay, Kip, so this freeze-on property tax increases. Let's make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. This is a cap on increases. It's not going to cut back anybody's taxes. It's just going to keep it from increasing as years go by. It can be implemented by ordinance from the county commission or a petition drive and then go to the ballot and the people vote it in. You guys want to look at this, the county commission wants to look at the language a little bit, get it cleaned up and run it back through the legislature. We have State Rep Cherie Tolson-Rice pushing the initiative position, trying to get on the ballot. Where do you think this thing's going? Tell our listeners what you think is going to happen here.
Well, I mean, it's a great question. We believe that the legislation the cleanup legislation has a chance of being run through as a consent bill, which kind of can fast track it in a lot of ways. It can cut down on the amount of amendments that are offered and really hopefully kind of be able to push it through relatively quickly in the new year, in the 2024 session. We know that the petition deadline for the August ballot will be May, I believe sometime in mid-May. I don't have that date off the top of my head. But we're going to watch it closely, remain in contact with the representative about how progress is being made. She certainly kept us up to date on it. I believe they collected close to half the signature required now, or a little bit less than half. Around 2,000 collected and 4,600 needed to be able to place it on the ballot. And so we'll monitor that. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the signatures are collected to be able to place it on the ballot. And so we'll just have to monitor and kind of see also where the progress is inside the Capitol in the conversation.
All right. Boone County Presiding Commissioner Kip Kendrick, thanks a lot for coming on and helping us understand that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Coming up next, we have What's Hot with Hannah.
Got a high-speed pursuit that I want to share this morning.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
What I think about players taking a knee during the national
segment on time. Not Stephanie.
Hey, come on.
Sorry. Had to clear my throat there. You know, we talk about a lot of high-speed pursuits that happen across the nation. A lot of people have opinions about high-speed pursuits and if they should even be a thing because they sometimes cause more damage to innocent passerbys than some would think necessary. But what about a, quote, high-speed pursuit that topped out at about 20 miles an hour when a 12-year-old from Michigan stole a forklift from a construction site and then proceeded to lead the police on an hour-long pursuit that topped out at 20 miles an hour, which...
This is like our guy on the lawnmower.
Yeah, pretty much. 20 miles an hour doesn't seem very fast until you think about the fact that it's a forklift.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sitting here wondering why a forklift needs to go 20 miles an hour. And also how this 12-year-old could drive it for an hour before it like ran out of juice or anything.
Or he
Had a fresh tank of LP on it, I guess.
Yeah.
Tipped it over.
I guess so. You know, the typical tactics that police would use to slow down a speeding car that they were chasing didn't really work because they couldn't get very close to him because of the forks on the front. But this 12-year-old was a middle school student, and there was a construction site at the middle school that he attended in Michigan. And I guess the keys were hidden in the cab of the forklift, which seems like a terrible idea when you know that you're surrounded by middle school students.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he saw his opportunity, and he took it. He didn't have any headlights working on his forklift, and it was a nighttime pursuit. But by the time they caught up to him, it was almost 8 p.m. when they finally caught him. And
he had a curfew, so he had to be home. Huh?
The police at one point that were chasing him had to stop because he had crossed the county line and couldn't do anything about it at that point. Luckily, he stopped shortly after. He was apprehended. He's being held in juvenile custody, and the police are still investigating the situation. I don't know what there is to investigate other than the fact that somebody left keys to a forklift laying around, and a 12-year-old boy got a great idea to go
and
on.
The spike strips don't work worth a darn on forklifts with solid rubber tires either.
Yeah.
I feel like we're giving criminals an idea here.
Well, yeah. Any 12-year-olds listening right now, don't do it.
Well, there's a new 6th grade legend at that middle school.
Something like that. Something tells me he probably won't be back at that school anytime soon. But you never know, I guess. But 20 miles an hour for a forklift. I'm still having a hard time picturing this. In the dark, no headlights.
Sounds like a legend to me. We're coming back. in Missouri. Mike Murphy here with Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Brian Hauswirth around here. John Marsh.
Yes, sir.
And Hannah, the producer.
What up?
We're going to talk a little bit about our mayor's trip to Dubai. You're welcome to join the conversation. The call or text number is 573-874-9390. So she's leaving today, 8-day trip to Dubai. She just got back from a 10-day trip to China that was sponsored by the U.S. Heartland China Association, which members of the U.S. intelligence community believe is linked to Communist China Party foreign influence operators, and the mayors are being targeted for promotion of the People's Republic of China's global agenda. I documented the heck out of that. That is a true story, and I have more on that coming. I know it's a bit of a giggle, but it raises the specter that our mayor is being groomed by Chinese communists.
Brandon and I ran into her in the airport when she was leaving.
So
that was the week after the whole T-shirt fiasco.
Yeah,
where she
maybe that's why she keeps heading out of town. But prior, if you remember earlier this summer, she was in New York at this Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative. And I should point out before I forget, because this is constantly being misconstrued on social media, where she is getting pillared. By the way, I just think there's this feeling that the city of Columbia, upper levels of government is pretty much a complete dumpster fire. If anybody wants to argue that, I think they're just uninformed. And she's off traveling the world, collaborating on the climate emergency. But she's not doing this on the city's dime. Somebody else is paying for all this. Bloomberg paid for the trip to New York.
Is that better or worse?
Well, I don't know. She is representing the city, and the question that gets asked is, what good does this do the city? We can see what good it might do, Barbara Buffalo's resume, but I don't know what good it does the city. And then the U.S., this delegation, she's a delegation of 6 mayors going to this UN climate conference in Dubai, and the Conference of Mayors pay for that. So,
well, and this is a prime example, and John can vouch for this, of why every time we have Mayor Fitzwater from Jeff City on the show, we inevitably get texts and comments from Wake Up family members saying, "Can we please trade with Jefferson City?"
Well, yeah. and I'm trying to remember historically, because even before Mayor Fitzwater, I haven't heard of him going on any trips. Maybe he's in Dubai now. I doubt it, but I saw him recently. And even I know Mayor Turgeon liked to travel personally, based on her social media, but I never saw her taking like mayoral trips. Now
the ones I think the folks in Jefferson City might be familiar with is some of the council types and city leaders, including Mayor Turgeon, took a couple of trips to the sister city in Germany.
Yes.
Yep, I remember that too.
That makes sense. Well, and I will. I'm not going to necessarily defend Barbara Buffalo. I will say, getting out of your bubble of wherever you are in mid-mo and talking to others who are similarly situated as you is something I really enjoy doing in my profession, and I think I'm better for it. So y'all know that I say that I have an aggressive travel schedule, and sometimes I am just, drinking an Aperol Spritz in Italy. But most of the time, I am meeting with colleagues who are in a very specific industry, and we're talking about, what is your jurisdiction experiencing? What's happening in your state about, for example, illegal machines in gas stations? How is your state handling that problem? I go and I talk to my Republican colleagues. How are you all handling litigation over voter ID or early voting? Tell me what your problems are and how you are combating that. And I think that those conversations have really benefited me in my career, especially when you're kind of in an area like city government where you can't just like walk around Columbia and necessarily get that kind of feedback. So I think
that's a good point from the standpoint, too, for a lot of folks out there. They say, well, the city council and the mayor took a big junket, but sometimes they're going to look at, let's say, like a river port somewhere where they talked about one for mid-Missouri, and do some field research and come back with that, as opposed to going to Dubai and global warming.
And I call on my colleagues that I meet at these conferences all the time, John. So I'll have a client call me. They work with me in Missouri, and they're like, I need help in Colorado. I need help in Kansas. I'm like, I know someone there who can help you, or I know someone, you're telling me about a problem, and I know someone who has dealt with that problem before. Or I call them and I say, I'm having this problem, and now I can just pick up the phone and say, what do you know? How do I, address these, especially in weird area issues like political issues, utilities, that kind of thing. But I will say, so in that way, I think, but then again, I pay for these trips myself.
Yeah, well, and I forgot to mention it, but they did just get back from Madison, Wisconsin on a trip up there to study many of those things, or to participate with the officials up there in conversation.
More communists there than in Red China.
And I will say, I have been on one trip. I do think I paid for this myself, but the city will sponsor. I know in Ashland will sponsor local elected officials to the Missouri Municipal League conference, and I actually think Barbara Buffalo should go to that.
Yeah,
I think
totally
her
agree.
Interacting with rural mayors, she might have a lot to learn.
Well, and let's keep in mind that it's also a big difference between her and Ron Fitzwater in their official roles. Ron Fitzwater is a mayor with administrative responsibility. The city administrator answers to him. He prepares the budget. He actually, the charter in Jeff City, like in many towns, the mayor has some administrative responsibility. Not so in Columbia. Mayor Buffalo has no more authority or responsibility than any other member of the city council. All that lies with the city manager, which also makes this you could argue that makes this even more okay that she's off doing this, because she's really not needed here at all. She really doesn't even belong in much of the stuff that goes on here, even though that's not the way it operates.
I guess for me, I don't understand why she's worried about like global climate change when we have bigger issues going on here at home.
Yeah, well, that's the case I'm going to make. The reason she's just taken so much heat, as are some of the other mayors, by the way, is, she writes a press release and, she's writing her own PR, and I'm afraid perhaps even believing some of her own PR. But it's like this summit, I'm quoting from the press release, it recognizes the critical role local leaders play in reducing emissions, addressing climate impacts, and supercharging efforts from the ground up to move further and faster on climate progress. She will join high-profile speakers from around the world as they make announcements of ambitious commitments to building climate-capable governments. Well, there's people sitting back here in Columbia, and I don't want to sound overly dramatic, but we have a real crisis at our police department. Okay, we're running at 65% staff. We're not patrolling traffic. We have a new police chief coming in. We have racial tensions. We're not getting our police officers trained the way they should be. We're one, major incident away where we could have the city burning, and I think all of our city council people have their heads in the sand about that. And then, while she's off, you just go through administrative thing. The buses aren't running because we can't hire anybody. The water isn't running. You can live in $1 million house in Thornbrook and not be able to take a shower, much less worry about fire protection.
Homelessness.
Residential recycling isn't getting picked up. Yes, we have never articulated any kind of a comprehensive policy on what we're doing with homelessness, which is growing. Everybody knows it is. There's people sleeping all over the place. We have 10 cities all over the place. Related, I should say unrelated, but spoken in the same breath, is we have panhandlers on every corner. And those are the things you see. What you don't see is capital projects not being completed. This is a travesty. We have projects that were funded by voters in 2015 that aren't completed. We have capital improvement projects from 18, critical infrastructure projects not funded. Millions of dollars that have been lost by inflation because we can't get the job done. The water plant, $25 million was supposed to fix the water plant. Now we're going to get half of it done because we've lost it all to inflation since 2018. 280 openings at City Hall. We can't hire anybody. We got the money. Can't get anybody to work for us. 400 short-term rentals. Airbnbs are operating illegally because after 5 years of work, we can't come up with ordinance that we can agree on that won't make somebody angry. So it just goes, on and on and on with serious, critical type issues that need creative solutions. They need work here The city manager doesn't. It doesn't appear like city staff is going to get these things solved. So there's this sense of frustration and malaise, and then it would be one thing if the mayor was ducking out once in a while on a trip, but this just seems I think if you're a Columbia citizen and you're outraged by this, I actually think you have a right to be.
Wow.
I know.
No, I think
I take from Mike Murphy this morning. I like it.
Well, I've been saying the same speech over and over. You just haven't heard it. But I've been covering this for a year. These are things that I've been covering. That's why these are all things in Como Buzz that I've been writing about, and I think many people are unaware of them, blissfully so. But this city has some really difficult issues that aren't being addressed.
Well, and I think in one way, as a conservative, I'm thinking, great, the less the Columbia City Council does, the better. Yeah. Like on Airbnb regulations, stay out of my business. We don't need more government regulation. So I think good if they're kind of in a holding pattern right now. But what I'm hearing from you, Mike, too, is that there are some spending things, some infrastructure things that if they don't take action on, we are going to be paying for later. And I think coming from Ashland, we have had some of those situations where things have gotten out in front of us, and now we're having to pay the price because we didn't do some basic things initially, and we're it's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, I didn't even mention we've just taken double-digit increases in municipal water rates and municipal electric rates. And another thing about Columbia is the gap. This is getting a little off target here, but the gap between rich and poor, it isn't shrinking, it's growing. And now we have government deciding, they're in there working on how we can lower rates for low-income people for their municipal utilities. It's just shaping up to be one,
Services Department was caught on tape stuffing large amounts of lunch money into her bra. She's accused of embezzling about $3 million from the district's lunch money fund. It's unclear how much of that actually went into her bra. She worked as their accountant for 16 years. They said they called the cops when they noticed the bra stuffing video footage. Didn't elaborate on where that was taken. Police say they searched Oak's home, turned up thousands of bucks in cash, and believe she'd been embezzling for the past 7 years. And they said she lived a lavish lifestyle. She and her late husband had expensive vehicles, dune buggies, motorcycles, jet skis, and she purchased a second home. Detectives said since she was busted, the prosecutor's being kept altogether now abreast of the investigation, and that is the rest of that story. Or stories.
That was good.
Yeah, $3 million in cash, like in greenbacks.
It's got to be a big bra. That's all I got.
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad you went there. But it's like, man, oh man, that's. You know, and usually you think in the lunchroom it's going to be small bills. You know.
Yeah, that's a lot of bills.
You know, my grandma would kill me if she knew I was telling this story right now. But she likes to keep her cell phone in there, and when it starts ringing, she doesn't always know right away, and then she has to fish it out. Then she's like
in
elbow,
public?
Yeah, she's like elbow deep in there trying to get it out. It's embarrassing.
Your poor
With a big smile on her face.
Pretty much.
The worst is when you go someplace that has euros and they give you all your change back in coins. It's not as easy to hide it.
Yeah. Yeah, even that happens in the U.S. every once in a while. Somebody won't have bills, and they'll give you back in coins and try to get rid of them.
The worst, though, was when I used to work in a bank in high school, and in the summertime, like, they'd give you wet money, and you always had to wonder where they pulled that money from on their way inside.
Oh, yeah, that's a dirty job. I never thought about banking being kind of a dirty job, but did you wash your hands all the time touching other people's cash?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a customer that owned a business with coin-operated machines, and he'd bring in several $100s once a week in quarters. And by the time you finished counting the quarters, like, our hands would be black.
Oh, that's so gross.
Yeah.
I never thought about lawyering being a very dirty job, but there are some times we turned in a lot of initiative petitions, and kind of like cash, Hannah, you know, those things go out on clipboards and you don't know how many people touch those different pieces of paper. But I specifically remember one that showed up and it was almost translucent. It looked like it had been dipped in like a vat of fried chicken grease.
Oh.
You know, where the paper...
Oh.
And I can't tell you how many times I washed my hands during that process of reviewing thousands of pages.
I can't help
I wonder if the lunch lady embezzled any of the change from the school dish.
and how she got
You don't
it
want
out.
to know where
how
she put
got
that.
it out of there.
Jingled right past the security.
You know, I can't believe that. I can't help but think of this. So somehow, just think who's doing the accounting for that school district.
Right?
You run a small business. You deal in cash. I have too. I mean,
I think it was her.
Yeah, right.
How
It would have to be.
In this, I get sophisticated embezzlement, right? I mean, it happens all the time.
Like on expense reporting or something.
Or somebody who's in a position of, real authority in a bank or something. But even there, it just doesn't happen anymore because the checks and balances are in place. Can you imagine waking up one day and all of a sudden discovered you've lost a ton of cash that you just didn't know was...
We hear about it right here in mid-Missouri. I mean, there was some, I think it was at a bank, and like somebody embezzled, over $100,000, John. And it's like, how do you get
It's not that unusual.
How do you get away with that? My poor husband, like we still budget things down to the dime. And I remember for many years, I would get so mad. I'm like, you took $20 out of the ATM. I said, I'm in my budget software. Was that a hair? And he's like, well, I said $11 on a haircut. I think I got a Coke. I'm like, where'd that other $7 go? Because I was like, I can't categorize it, and I'm not making a miscellaneous category. But I think, you get busy and the numbers get really big, and, a couple $100 here and a couple $100 there. And then
over a period of time, I suppose,
people get in a routine and they're not checking. But I think it's a good reminder to everyone in business, like, you got to have your eyes on that and have people you trust.
If you're in a cash business or you're dealing with a lot of cash, you better, or else you're going to get hurt or you're not going to be in business for long.
Or you're going to have an entanglement with the Department of Revenue.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is worse.
we're from the government. We're here to help. There are resources there, there's technical assistance there, and there's a playbook that could support the work you're doing. Count on us as a partner in this. Our students are waiting. Thank you.
Oopsie, didn't quite get that right. That was Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona yesterday quoting President Reagan, and you gotta love Twitter.
Good grief.
Thank goodness for Elon Musk, because he said he's added this context thing on Twitter, and now it's got the official flag on the video, and it says additional context. The full quote is from an August 1986 press conference. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
So, I mean, he technically did say those words.
Yeah.
But as Brian Hauswirth would say, it needs the big C word.
Well, it's one of his most famous quotes ever. You know, it's a quote that lives on forever. It's kind of...
And of all the people to say it,
yeah,
it just had to be
and then
the education secretary. I mean, really?
Yeah.
When I first saw this, I thought it was fake. I'm not going to lie. I thought the Babylon Bee might have posted it. Maybe it was satire. And I was dismayed to find out that it was, in fact, legit. And I may or may not have shed a tear or two.
There's one other thing we should point out about that, and notwithstanding this issue about Musk, in the context of everything, when President Reagan said that in 1986, you think about it, wasn't all that long ago. He had just won 49 states. Walter Mondale, by the way, very popular vice president. He beat him in 49 states. And the majority of Americans agreed with him. But if somebody were to say that today, it'd probably be 50-50. The electorate has changed so much, or the mood has changed so much. There's a sizable number of people in the country that would not agree with that statement. They believe that government, healthcare, government this, government that, that's the way to go. At that time, President Reagan, was pretty. Although he did have to deal with the Democratic House for that entire time.
It's what made him such a great communicator, though. It's a line that's funny. It makes a very, very, very perfect point.
I just love, though, that Elon is officially owning people on Twitter, just adding this weird context flag. Did anyone see PETA get owned on Thanksgiving with the turkey photo? Did you see this, Mike Murphy?
No.
So they posted this photo of turkeys sitting around a table eating turkeys, and they say, we're lucky turkeys would never do this to us, and you don't have to do it to them either. And then Elon, or the people at X, added, turkeys are actually not vegetarians. Turkeys eat mice, lizards, frogs, and just about anything they can fit in their mouth. If turkeys were larger or had the technological means to farm and eat humans, their current diet reveals they likely would. Is that for real? I mean, that's a for real thing, right? People were retweeting that.
That's hilarious.
Does anyone know officially? Hannah, you're our FFA girl. Turkeys eat meat?
No, I don't think so.
They eat a lot of June bugs.
Yeah. I mean,
you throw it out there with a peck at it, Hannah?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
Chickens eat each other. You know how that goes.
Birds really aren't very smart, so I would believe just about anything.
Well, we're getting a ton of texts, Mike, about the mayor's trip to Dubai.
I'm not surprised. I've been sensing a ton of, social's already going crazy on it. So, yeah, I'm not surprised.
We should point out that the mayor, and I'll put it up on our regular Facebook page as well, because I'm sure it's going to get a lot of comments. Two points that we absolutely have to make, and John's done a nice job breaking this down as well. Number one, she is saying, because a lot of people are saying, well, they don't want their tax money paying for this trip. I've seen that a few times.
Nathan is concerned about how she is going to offset her carbon footprint after the 17-hour flight to Dubai.
But the Conference of Mayors is funding the trip, and she is a key member. And this is the United Nations thing. They've invited her to speak at just not one, a number of events, and she's going to be talking about heat. She's going to be reiterating that she's going to talk about Colombia's leadership in climate action. But we should also point out, too, that it's subject for debate. I'll leave the policy issues up to you folks and the callers, but the fact is that the city manager, in the way the city is set up, the city manager runs the day-to-day operations of the city. It is not the mayor. And I can just tell from some of the comments I'm seeing, I don't think people realize that. I mean, she does preside over the meetings and has a big role, but DeCarlin Seawood essentially runs this city, just like Ray Beck did when Darwin Heinemann was mayor. But
it's so misunderstood. I just see it constantly. And you know what? It's nothing new. That's why I'm beginning to be a proponent of some type of discussion on charter change, even if we don't change it, because people. It goes back to the 1920s. I've been researching this. We've always been a strong manager, and then in the 70s we reaffirmed it. And our mayor is nothing more really than an elected at-large elected member of the city council.
One vote, one seat.
She has no more authority than any other city council member. But people are out there, complaining about potholes and saying worst mayor ever. And I have been responding over and over again. You may be right, but not for the reasons that you think.
Well, that's it. And again, whether it's the right decision or not for her to go there, she believes heat is killing. I want to make sure I'm quoting this right. She says heat kills more people in a year than all other weather phenomena, and she's going to be talking about that. But the point of the matter is, what you just said is absolutely correct. The mayor does not run the day-to-day operations of the city. And if you think about it, back in the 80s and 90s, Ray Beck really ran the city. But DeCarlin Seawood runs the day-to-day operations, so it's not like it's not like City Hall's going to be unattended. But people are pretty fired up about this trip.
One of our local news outlets actually posted this story on Twitter yesterday. And I'm laughing at one of the replies. It says, "I'm not trying to be hateful here. She got rid of curbside recycling. Maybe we should focus our efforts locally to solve problems like that."
Well, that's what everybody's saying.
And that's what
people put your energy into this city you love, and I think you're blowing off. So
Steve says, "I attended the most recent sessions of the Civic Academy. It was obvious to me that the mayor's agenda relative to climate change and sustainability has permeated all of city government."
I've not heard, and Steve may be very well correct. I don't know, but I've not heard the city manager, Mike. You're down there a lot with me. I haven't heard DeCarlin Seawood talk much about climate change. I'm going back.
Here's what I think Steve is referring to. So the sustainability office that Barbara led created the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan.
Yes,
and that. Every single thing that goes on in City Hall is supposed to be viewed through the lens of that CAAP document. And in fact, if you go to their 286-page document, every single department has to make a statement to how they are adhering to this CAAP. And I did a piece on it a while back, everything from, the city managers using plastic silverware, or quit using plastic silverware because, and using this... no-mow medians we have. They're called pollinators now, to switching to electric carts at the golf course. It does permeate throughout city government. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. It's just that's what the Office of Sustainability, which began when she got hired 10 years ago, I guess it's 12 years ago now, was a grant for her salary. And it's now a $500,000 a year department in City Hall that rides herd over sustainability.
Well, think back, because Brian brought up Darwin Heinemann, and I remember back in the early 2000s, that he had forums and climate challenge Columbia response and lowering the city's carbon footprint. And I mean, it kind of tracks along with the current mayor.
Oh yeah,
you're right. And Darwin did do that. The former mayor, the late mayor, did do that, but he didn't go to Dubai. He wasn't, I don't remember him being, speaking at the United Nations events like this. I mean, this is pretty, I'm going to say it's unprecedented. I've never seen a mayor of a town of Columbia, she's speaking at a number of events, going to be speaking.
One of 6 mayors just in that delegation.
Yeah, and was one of the few mayors chosen to go along on this trip to China. So, she's a formidable figure and feels very strongly about this, but it will be something. But again, just so people know, she's saying the U.S. Conference of Mayors is paying for the trip. I have no idea, guys, how much a hotel room goes in Dubai. I can tell you to get a decent place to stay in Jefferson City is going to run you about $110.
It's going to cost you more than that in Dubai.
One more comma.
Dubai. I mean, probably $500 a night, wouldn't you say?
Certainly. I think. Well, let me say that I like Mayor Buffalo personally.
Yeah.
I don't. We disagree on the issues, but I will tell you, Sam Mike is taking. He's taking an issue with something you said earlier. You said she's being groomed by the CCP, and he said grooming is a process to get someone to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do. She does not need to be groomed to be a communist. She can handle everything it takes to be a communist all on her own. So those are some pretty strong words. But I think even though we say Columbia is a really liberal city, I think that the mayor is far left of where even her liberal counterparts are on climate change and on priorities. And I
She's
think
been on this for a long time. I mean,
she has been, yeah.
But Brian can remember Barbara Buffalo, being what was her title? Environmental specialist with MU Extension.
Climate czar.
It's climate czar. Yeah. But basically, when she took that job that Mike referenced, people thought she was going to take everyone's cars away, and that didn't happen. But Stephanie, to your point, it is interesting. That's a pretty strong email. You're saying that she's basically to the left of people in town, and she very well may be. But if you drive on West Broadway in Columbia, just drive down all the way down West Broadway, there are yard signs everywhere that say "Vote Climate" or "Climate Change." I mean, they're on ash. So, I mean, there are people who really, now, they're not in our listening audience, probably not most of them, but they do believe that. And if you guys remember, Mike, you hit it on the head. It was the 4th Ward that provided the margin of victory. If it weren't for the 4th Ward, Randy Minshew probably wins that race.
I think that Columbia, and I think that there's a preponderance of evidence that Columbia is the most conservative, progressive town you will ever run into. There's a lot of people that identify as progressives that really aren't that progressive at all. And I don't have any doubt, or there's no doubt in my mind, that Barbara Buffalo and her politics are way to the left of most people in Columbia.
And I think, so we're also getting, Tanya is saying, and who is the U.S. Conference of Mayors funded by? Because that's a really good question, Tanya, that, hey, she's getting paid by this organization. Yeah, who's the contributor to this organization? I will push back a little bit in Barbara Buffalo's defense, and I think we could do a better job of covering this. She is not the only one who goes on international junkets paid by third parties on the local level.
Believe it.
There are a lot of folks, I would say, in the election space, in other county and city spaces that go on these international trips paid by third parties. And I think as local media, we could probably do a better job of covering all those trips. So she's taking the heat now because I think her trips are maybe more extravagant. We are looking at the futures just a few minutes before the market opens, all in the red. Not feeling very, but not by much, but still not great as the market opens this morning. Somebody who is doing great, and we kind of knew this, but I was shocked by the numbers I saw in the Journal reported yesterday. Amazon has now eclipsed UPS. They eclipsed, I believe, FedEx a few years ago, but now in 2020. But now they have delivered more packages in 2022 than UPS, and they're expected to deliver even more this year. So far, before Thanksgiving, they had delivered 4.8 billion with a B, billion packages in the U.S. They're thinking they will deliver about 5.9 billion with a B by the end of the year. Last year, they only did 5.2 billion. And that's important here in mid-Missouri. We've got an Amazon distribution center right down there by the airport. And when they announced the numbers, like the year that it opened, how many packages they expected to deliver, it was insane. And I know I had visited there recently, and they had some limitations, and they were changing some things about how large of packages they would be able to go through the distribution center, and they were already preparing to do more than they had done last year. So
it's remarkable how huge that is, and the impact that it has just on traffic. You see them all over the place. And it's also curious that both FedEx and UPS had a chance to partner with Amazon, and it never happened. Amazon decided to go out and do its own delivery, and now they're the biggest private. Only the U.S. Post Office delivers more packages per year than Amazon.
It's really interesting. And I believe a lot of their delivery drivers are essentially independent contractors. Mm-hmm. And I know, like, in here, I think a lot of them are students and other people.
And part-timers,
yeah, do it in the morning or do it as
weekends,
a second job.
Yeah, they're out doing it on Sundays.
It's really great. I know I get packages delivered. Mm-hmm. So did anyone Hannah, did you do some Black Friday shopping?
I did a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, what about Small Business Saturday shopping?
I didn't go on Saturday, but I shopped a lot of small businesses on Friday. A lot of small businesses had really great Black Friday deals going on in Centralia and Columbia and Jefferson City. So I definitely hit some spots in all three of those.
What about Cyber Monday? And, today's Travel Tuesday, if you haven't heard. I'm getting tired. And actually, it's also Giving Tuesday, which is a good reminder for folks. A lot of our charitable organizations will be doing pushes today for folks to give.
And speaking of giving, our 1-for-1 holiday food drive with Commerce Bank is coming up in just a couple weeks on Wednesday, December 13th. So be looking for more information on that in the coming weeks. And it's already up on both radio stations' websites, so go check it out.
Well, apparently shoppers spent nearly $10 billion on Black Friday. And yesterday, I don't think we have the final numbers out for Cyber Monday, but it was expected to be a record as well.
People are moving online. It's just too darn easy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think we're coming up on another break. So, in the next segment, Lincoln University Murphy is here with John Marsh.
Good morning.
Hannah, the producer.
Hola.
Brian Hauswirth around here somewhere. Oh, he's heading in. And Stephanie Bell is here with a quick traffic update.
We are getting some texts about the intersection in Columbia, Providence, and Vandiver. They're saying the intersection's closed in all directions and traffic is being diverted. People are saying use Blue Ridge instead of Vandiver between Garth and Range Line. If we get an update, we'll try to let you know. Here's a new update too. Traffic is being detoured on Providence at gas station by I-70 in Providence. So if you can, avoid that area.
Strange spot. I wonder what's going on. I wonder if it's traffic or what.
I've not heard of anything on the scanner.
Well, that's a weird spot for that kind of a backup.
Yeah, it really is. And it could be anything. I would assume it's probably some sort of if there's callers that can tell us, I'm assuming there's been a wreck of some kind. I don't know if they're saying.
Yeah, let us know if you're in that area and you know what's going on. We're getting fast and furious texts about just the backups.
All right.
That's again a very unusual spot.
It's not a place where traffic would, unless it's right in the intersection, I suppose.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll call in. I've not heard a word on the scanner.
Okay. So a news item here. I was Lincoln University in Jeff City. Just received a $10 million grant, I believe this was announced yesterday, from the Department of Agriculture to recruit black students to get them involved in agriculture, projecting a shortage of high-tech ag workers in the future, and using Lincoln and the University of Missouri Science and Technology at Rolla also got a grant to try to develop these students, these black students, into workers in the ag industry. And for perspective, I wondered, $10 billion, it sounded like, a pretty huge amount to me. So I did a little checking around, and the entire budget, Lincoln University's entire budget is only $40 million, and $10 million equals almost a year of tuition. So a $10 million shot, and now that is over 5 years, but still a $10 million shot in the arm, that's quite a thing for Lincoln University.
That's a lot of money. And I know I've seen some criticism online because they're like, oh, is this money for DEI or like diversity initiatives? But at the same time, I mean, what we know about farming is the number of farmers and the number of farms have been dwindling. So, and Lincoln has a really good ag program, really great farmers market, really good extension programs. So
look at the history of the HBCUs. You know, it's almost ironic. I mean, the HBCUs were so ag-based by design and by statute when they first opened up, is to provide those kind of jobs for minority people, primarily black folks.
Well, and as someone with an agriculture degree from Mizzou, I am excited about this because, like Stephanie was saying, the number of farmers are dwindling, but also the average age of a farmer is growing pretty quickly.
Yeah, no young people. Yeah.
Right. We're looking at the average age of a farmer in the United States is 57 years old, and only 8% of farmers in the industry are under the age of 35. And I think that those numbers should probably scare us a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hannah, about the average age. And that, of course, is nationwide. The Missouri number, and Christians probably listening to us, they update that every few years. The last time I checked the Department of Agriculture in Missouri, the average age was 58, so it's very close to what Hannah just said. Average age, that is a big deal. Tom Vilsack, the Secretary of Agriculture, has spoken at at Lincoln University several times. But to your point about trying to get more African Americans in agriculture, I know that previous administrations, presidents of both parties, have done some similar things. I know when I worked in Northwest Missouri many years ago, this is 30 years ago, I remember talking to several black farmers that farmed in that part of the state. I believe they were from Slater in Marshall and a couple over in Malta Bend. But it is farming is not an easy task. I wish them all the best, and it sounds like a noble plan indeed.
A Lincoln professor says this, quote, "We will still recruit students from farm backgrounds and rural areas, but we will also go to suburban and urban schools and show students there are opportunities for a career in agriculture."
I love this because not only do we need farmers, there are so many careers within the agriculture sector and the ag industry that involve technology, science, and we need all of those people too. It's not just, the old stereotype of, farming only means planting
Guy with a
corn or
plow.
beans. Yeah. It's so high tech and so scientific nowadays that there are a gazillion different opportunities within the ag industry. And I think that pushing for young people, regardless of what background they come from, is super important.
Yeah, agribusiness, you're right. And we've got the Animal Science Corridor, which is in the Kansas City, St. Joseph area. You've got the USDA that basically moved most of their a lot of jobs. They moved to Kansas City. That's a big deal. They're in Kansas City, Missouri. So a lot of opportunities.
Board of Trade in Kansas City with all the work that they do with the futures market worldwide.
Huge.
Well, and there's almost 100 million FFA students over the course of the nation, and we have a national FFA officer from right here in mid-Missouri serving right now. His name is Grant Norfleet from Mexico. He was just chosen as one of those FFA officers, and it's really exciting to see what's happening here in Mid-Mo.
Well, good for Lincoln. $10 million.
Yeah, it's incredible, the work they're doing.
All right. So what else you want to do this hour?
What else do I want to do?
Well, we got a call here. We're waiting to see if it comes through. I was going to, before we transition, I think this guy probably wants to talk about the
Well, and I think,
Lincoln.
John, did you have an update on homelessness in Jeff City?
Well, this is an ongoing thing, as you can relate to. What is it, 2 or 3 blocks up the street from your law office in Jefferson City?
Well, it's closer than that.
Yeah. Well, Busher Memorial Home on East Capitol Avenue, and I think the people who followed that story was one of the properties that was so run down the city had to go to court and battle the owner to take it over. Now they're getting into or having continuing issues with homelessness and some of those falling down properties on Capitol Avenue, and even the old Truman Hotel out on Highway 54 has had some issues out there too. And it's become an ongoing challenge for law enforcement and emergency responders and all. I mean, they've had fires in some of these abandoned buildings, people trying to keep warm. So nothing new under the sun, unfortunately.
I know the churches are doing, are trying to do their part, and then we've got other private organizations that are trying to work together to solve some of this. And I know we've heard from our own law enforcement officers, look, we aren't always fully equipped to handle the mental challenges that come with, all of the needs when we encounter these situations. And I mean, typically they hang out right there in front of the library. But John, I mean, they're throughout downtown now. And I think, if you run a business or you've got members of the public coming in and out, I think there are some safety concerns.
They got to get on top of it.
We had that issue with the guy, what was it, a few weeks ago? We did the story on someone had been fatally beaten outside that stretch of downtown Jefferson City.
Yeah, they really need to get on top of it fast because, as you can see, Columbia, it can get out of control in a hurry, or it can expand in a hurry, and it very much requires a response other than police. That's what you're going to see coming up here soon with Columbia. This isn't police business. This is a business of somebody else. Brian Hauswirth.
Yes, sir. Just got off the phone with Joint Communications and just moments ago, and I appreciate Stephanie pointing this out because, again, I've not heard anything on the scanner.
And I will defer that thanks to our texters. We've had several people keeping us updated.
Yeah, and their information's close, but it's not totally accurate. I just got off the phone with Joint Communications. So right now we do have a wreck near Providence and Vandiver. Southbound Providence is closed at Vandiver, but the northbound lane is open. So I'm going to repeat that again. Southbound Providence is closed at Vandiver. Northbound lane is open, but it is tying up traffic right now, and I don't have any idea how many cars are involved. At least 2, sounds like, but it is closed until further notice. But try to avoid that area if at all possible. But thanks to Joint Communications and the dispatchers for getting us the update information, and thanks to the callers as well. Unusual place for a wreck, but it is.
That's McKnight Tire. That would be McKnight Tire on the.
Somebody said they're at Enterprise.
The Enterprise
back that way. Okay.
So it'd be and again that would be Enterprise would be.
They said the car went off the road by JJ Cafe.
Yep,
JJ Cafe. So you're talking
Eagle
about
Stop right there.
The Eagle Stop would be there. The Probation Parole Office. There is I'm trying to think. There used to be a hotel that got torn down. That would be that.
Yep.
that you know the area I'm talking about. And I
do.
believe Albert Honda, I'm trying to remember what, it's now Malkin's, but that basic area is where we're talking
something
about.
probably happened in the intersection. It's a tough intersection. There's 2 left-hand turns there coming on Vanderveer. I drive it a lot. And it's a pretty high speed. So that sounds like probably what happened.
Listener Brandon, appointed reporter from the from the field today. Thanks for keeping us updated.
Absolutely, that's we really appreciate that information because that affects a lot of people. Mike, I've seen speeding in that area too. I don't have any idea if this has anything to do with today, but definitely we've seen some speeding over there. But it sounds like. Did you say the car went off the road? Is that?
That's what we're hearing.
Okay, the dispatchers didn't mention that, but definitely there's a large police presence as they work that.
Hopefully nobody's not too hurt or banged up. So. with Stephanie Bell. Brian Hauswirth around here somewhere. John Marsh.
Yes, sir.
Hannah, the producer. Marsh, it's your show in the morning.
Yeah, we've got a cast of thousands, as they like to say. Our buddy Brad Jones from the Missouri chapter, National Federation of Independent Business, will be in to co-host with us tomorrow and fill us in on how the shopping scene is looking, especially just coming past Small Business Saturday and the local crowd. 7 o'clock, our Senator Mike Burnsketter from Mid-Missouri in to talk to us about some, previewing the upcoming legislative session. We'll hit him up about any potential for any more tax cuts. Susan Albert from the J.C. Chamber of Commerce will come in, talk to us about the Jefferson City shopping scene. And then the liberal you love to hate, we like to bill him as, from the Missouri Budget Project, former state of Missouri chief economist Tom Kruckmeyer, to tell you what's wrong with the budget over at the Capitol. And Rick Combs will be here, too. He's a former Libertarian gubernatorial candidate. So we've got a building full of them. I guess I'm bringing the donuts.
Sounds great.
Are you going to deliver to the other studio, John?
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right.
What do we got down the hall? I mean, you know.
What do we got for leftovers this morning?
Well, I have something. We are going to hear more from the House Ethics Committee. They've been conducting an investigation into Missouri House Speaker Dean Plocher. They've met twice already, although it wasn't necessarily confirmed that the first two meetings were exactly whether it was about Dean Plocher or whether it was about some of the other personnel changes going on. I believe the rumor is that this meeting is about Dean Plocher. Anyway, they're meeting next Wednesday, I believe is December 6th, at 2 p.m. So we will have more on that coming up.
Your gut hunch, first of all, does he survive? He'll certainly survive in office, might not hold his leadership position. And how bad does he get hurt from this?
I think he survives just fine.
Good.
John, what do you think?
I have mixed opinions from what I've been hearing from the State House. I'm looking for something perhaps between now and Christmas to come out on this and see where it all goes when the smoke clears.
That'll be really soon then.
I also saw this Ultimate Troll yesterday by Liquid Death that I think we mentioned Liquid Death. So it's canned water.
You should get a case of it.
They're one of my fave brands. They have great stuff. And they did come out with, so they've got canned water, but they make this tea now too. And you can get canned tea. And apparently they had named their iced tea, half lemonade. They had named it Armless Palmer. And the folks got real mad and they got sued. And Liquid Death just came out on their social media. They said they wanted to sue us, so we changed the name. The new name, Dead Billionaire. And so they were like, you know what? Rather than spending the money on litigation, we'll just change the name and troll you. And yeah, so you should check out their social media. They are I would say, a bold brand. It's rather interesting to watch them.
And for anyone who's not familiar with Liquid Death, it's, like Stephanie said, canned water, but it's designed to kind of look like a beer can.
It looks like a 40, and it's kind of got like, what's that? It's got like a angry looking logo. What beer kind of looks like that? I forget. Anyway, if you were walking down the street holding it, you would...
Open container laws.
You would think that it was a beer.
I hadn't heard of it before Stephanie started drinking it, and she brought it into the studio one morning. It's like 5:30 in the morning, and she cracks one open, and I was sitting over here going, wow, Steph, like, rough night?
And you would think, I mean, but, it's a radio station, so there's like, beer in the fridge and stuff. It's not like the radio station's not like a typical workplace, but we do not crack a cold one before the show starts.
It does sort of look like an Old English or a Colt 45.
Yes, Old English.
Something.
Yes, John, that's what I was thinking of. Yes.
We save the cracking open for after the show.
After the show. Wake up after dark.
And we're getting darn close.
So the Missouri minimum wage goes up to $12.30 per hour on January 1. That's up from $12, a 30 cents increase.
And they are circulating an initiative to raise it even higher.
I hate to be the back in my day person at the ripe old age of 23, but when I started a minimum wage job back in 2019.
Was this at the bank?
No, it was not at the bank.
Okay.
Minimum wage in 2019, when I started this job that I was working at the time, was like $8.60, and that was only 4 years ago.
It's incredible. In college, I had a job, and I was making, I think, $12 an hour, and I thought I was in hog heaven.
Yeah, I think in the last year, at the low end of the wage scale, it's increasing pretty fast because people can't find people. So I'm sure there's people still out there working for $12.30 an hour and in that minimum wage area, but a lot of people are making more than that now who used to be stuck at minimum wage, I think, just because
we
of
got
market
$25 an hour out in California for a month.
You know, it's interesting. The federal minimum is still $7.25 an hour.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that till I was looking at this story.
Missouri, the next California.